The karma has been there in the Boruto series since the very first page of chapter 1, but doesn't actually make its first chronological appearance in the manga until the final pages of chapter 10, and it didn't even receive a proper name until chapter 24. In this chapter, we are introduced to a freshly escaped and frightened Kawaki, who questions Team 7 after seeing that Boruto also has a karma mark. 79 chapters later, and we still don't know everything there is to know about this mysterious jutsu known as the karma. What's going on, guys? It's Momoshiki, the JOJO watching janitor, and today we're going to be talking about the karma as it appears in the Boruto manga. So, I guess there's no better place to start than the name. Karma, sometimes spelled like this, is a term in the Sanskrit language that literally translates to action or doing. Sanskrit being the sacred but technically extinct language of Hinduism. The concept of karma finds its origin in both Buddhism and Hinduism theology, referring to how your actions of the past and present can affect the future of your current life. In addition to affecting your current life, it is believed in these cultures that your previous actions can also affect any and all lives to come, as these cultures do believe heavily in reincarnation. This cycle of rebirth or reincarnation is known as samsara, sometimes spelled like this. And this constant life and rebirth is generally considered unfavorable due to the fact that one can never obtain their full potential or true enlightenment through nirvana due to being trapped in this cycle. Now, there is a workaround to this seemingly endless cycle, and it involves manipulating your karma.
In a positive way, of course.
Liberation from samsara is found through a process called the Eightfold Path, which dictates the 8 ways to improve your karma, and this is typically represented by a wheel with 8 spokes, hence the name. So, by this point, you're probably wondering how all of this is relevant to the Boruto series, as well as the overall purpose of this video. Well, it's because the main motivation for employing the jutsu, known as the karma, is the resurrection of an extinguished soul. Much like reincarnation, those who have passed on are given new life. The only difference between the two is that those revived through the karma are very much aware of what came before resurrection, and even benefit from this knowledge to an exceptional degree. So I think now is a good time to go over the origins of the karma within the series, since I think that it would be helpful in understanding not only the type of jutsu that this is, but the application of it as well. As Amado explains to us in chapter 51, the karma is a technique employed by the Otsutsuki for the purpose of reviving themselves in the event of unalivation, which, in the case of their clan's lower class, is as inevitable as a Naruto shadow clone. I don't want to bore anybody with the play-by-play of how it works, since we'll be here all day if I do, but the skinny version of it is that the high-ranking Otsutsuki, Momoshiki, Ishiki, and more than likely Shibai, based on how we know the clan operates, typically sacrifices the lower-ranking Otsutsuki to the Ten Tails in order to form a god tree that will increase their overall power, widening the gap between the low-ranking and the high-ranking. These lower-class Otsutsuki, like Kaguya and Kinshiki, are who the karma are generally meant for, as it will revive them so that they may be sacrificed once more at the next planet to cultivate a new god tree, and the cycle just continues on from there. The process for implanting a karma seal onto someone has been done in a number of ways as of this point in the series, so I just want to go over that really fast. So, as explained by Amado, once again like everything else, the karma is a highly compressed data version of an individual. This data replicates everything from their chakra to their dojutsu to even their smile. The data is similar to a sugar cube in coffee, and as the sugar breaks down and mixes with the coffee, both are lost and become something new. This is the simile that Amado uses to describe the process of the karma, rewriting a person's entire DNA. How this data is implanted into the host has been shown in quite a few ways as of Boruto chapter 79. The first way that we see karma implanted on someone is in chapter 10. Momoshiki, seemingly from beyond the grave, is able to place a mark onto Boruto during some form of astral projection where all time is frozen. It is implied that Sasuke, like usual, is able to sense Momo's presence, but Momoshiki is definitely no longer among the living in the traditional sense following that massive Rasengan. I think that what we are seeing here is his soul, hence why he appears to be in his base form rather than in his fused one. Whether he was able to place one on a Boruto during the battle is anyone's guess, but the general consensus is that it was done when he grabs Boruto by the wrists. The second way that we see karma being implanted onto someone is a little more interesting because the method is so drastically different. Rather than the almost mythical fashion that Boruto receives his karma, we see in a flashback from Kawaki that Jigen and Amado employ a mostly scientific approach. The pair place an unwilling subject into a breathing apparatus and a large tank filled with some form of liquid that Jigen can place his karma into and spread it to a new host. In most cases, this resulted in the death of the host, resulting in about 9 total casualties. I do want to note that in the manga, Jigen uses only children for his experiments since, as Amado says in a pretty sus way, a young and healthy vessel is better than one whose days are numbered. We do learn that this is the way that Kawaki receives his karma, as he turns out to be a compatible vessel for Jigen, who, himself, is a vessel for Ishiki Otsutsuki. So I guess now the question arises, how is a vessel supposed to plant a karma on another vessel? And so there are two answers to this question actually. The way you can look at it is that it's all theoretical and there is no real proof that it can be done. But Kawaki does speculate to Boruto that he can do anything that Jigen can do, much like Boruto can do anything that Momoshiki can do, meaning that they should be able to create their own vessels. And Kawaki's plan was to place a karma mark on Code in the event that Boruto's body was taken over by Momoshiki. In the case of Jigen placing a karma on Kawaki, Ishiki still technically exists, living inside of Jigen's head, so technically Ishiki would be placing the karma on Kawaki, not Jigen. And when I say exists within Jigen, I mean literally, not figuratively.
Hey, that's pretty sus too.
So that leads me perfectly into the next method that we see, and that is with Ishiki and Jigen. Now, I previously mentioned that the Otsutsuki operate in pairs, and that the lower ranking Otsutsuki is sacrificed to the Ten Tails in order to cultivate the god tree and bolster the higher ranked. In the case of Kaguya and Ishiki, upon arriving to Earth, she betrayed he and left him for dead. Ishiki was now in a desperate situation and forced to use the karma in order to save himself, but due to being too weak, he wasn't able to do so. Rather, Ishiki physically embedded himself into the ear of a nearby monk named Jigen. Over time, Ishiki was able to physically hijack Jigen like Ratatouille and recover until he was strong enough to implant the karma onto the monk, which he eventually did by hand rather than in the vats since he did not have Amado around yet. This validated that you were able to have multiple karma vessels at a time, as well as Amado saying so in the same chapter. In Ishiki's case, the only problem was that Jigen was not a suitable vessel and would make reviving worthless, as he would only last a couple of days at most before turning to dust. This is because a vessel has to be able to handle as well as be compatible with the chakra of whoever is implanting the karma. So this is important to mention because in chapter 51, Ishiki, having revived in an unsuitable vessel, says that he has maybe a day or two left before Jigen's body gives out. In this moment of revival, we learn that if an Otsutsuki were to revive while having multiple vessels out in the wild, then all other karmas will disappear. Once Baryon mode puts him on his back pockets, Ishiki says to himself that he has at most 10 minutes left to live due to Baryon mode shortening the lifespan of anyone it comes in contact with. Through Naruto's connected chakra, Ishiki is able to sense and bring Kawaki to his location. Through some trickery, Kawaki Uzumaki was able to trick Ishiki into implanting a karma onto a shadow clone in his last minutes. We see the karma spread throughout the shadow clone's body like normal, but then it begins to fade away, showing that a clone of any nature is not a suitable vessel for the karma. The final method we see is not between an Otsutsuki and a vessel, but between Kawaki and Amado. Unbeknownst to Kawaki, Amado reapplies his karma scientifically, but has removed the possibility of Ishiki reviving, completely weaponizing the ability. Or so we believe, because he then tells us that there is a way to use the karma in order to revive someone else, which is very different from the way the Otsutsuki used the ability. Amado's plan is to revive his daughter by using the karma bestowed on the Kawaki. Based on how we know that the karma works, Amado has more than likely placed his daughter's compressed data into Kawaki's karma as a means of bringing her back, but how he plans to go about that exactly is yet to be seen. Now, I'm sure you're yelling at the screen about how I forgot about Oroshiki, and no, I didn't. I also haven't forgotten about Code either, being that he is another bearer of the karma. In the aforementioned experiment where Kawaki receives his original karma, there was another child who also appeared to be compatible with the karma, surviving the process. This was Code, but for whatever reason, he was unsuitable as a vessel, leaving his karma to appear white rather than the traditional black markings that we see with Jigen, Boruto, and Kawaki. This makes Code's karma completely weaponized, much like Kawaki's current karma is. Real quick, I just want to say that this video is sponsored by you guys. Thanks for watching, appreciate you. Now, back into the video. So, by this point, I've referred to the karma as a weapon a few times now. So I guess there's no better time to go over the abilities that possessing one can grant an individual. So the easiest to cover would be the overall stat buff a person receives just from activating their karma. In chapter 29, Kawaki explains that activating the karma significantly increases your physical abilities, even saying that you outright get stronger, with Naruto agreeing that Boruto feels like he's brimming with more power than before he activated it. As they go on to spar, Naruto notes that Boruto's jutsu strength has also increased a fair amount. In Chapter 63, during the Karma Trio battle, Code expands on this physical increase in a few ways, stating that it is in fact an exponential jump in battle strength, and the reason for this being the case is what he refers to as Otsutsuki combat experience. He goes on to explain that an individual who is able to hone the karma properly and efficiently will instantaneously become a seasoned warrior due to this combat experience, which is the accumulation of Otsutsuki battle experience overlaid over your mind and body. He even states that this battle experience spans over the course of a millennia, which is just unfathomable. Most people can't even imagine $1 million, let alone a millennia. In the next chapter, we are given a glimpse at yet another major benefit of possessing a karma. In this chapter, chapter 64, we see Boruto seemingly manifest Momoshiki's power through the karma, including his Byakugan. Receiving the dojutsu of whoever's DNA is extracting within you is par for the course of a proper karma vessel, as we do see Kawaki eventually is able to take full control of Jigen's unnamed dojutsu and all of its abilities. Although Boruto doesn't activate his Byakugan at the time, he is able to access it during the code fight. Whereas, when Kawaki receives Sukuna Hukuna, he mainly relies on those from that point forward. Now, I do want to mention that the karma on Boruto has allowed Momoshiki to take over on numerous occasions, but based on what Code says to Boruto about Momoshiki emerging while he is just merely a vessel, sort of implies that this isn't a common occurrence with a traditional karma user. On to the next ability on our list of things that the karma can do, we have Absorption, which I know is a controversial one for the franchise, but this one is fairly straightforward, much like our last ability, so it shouldn't take too long. They can absorb jutsu. No, but seriously. During the Boro fight in Chapter 41, Team 7 is aware that any jutsu used against them, either Kawaki or Boruto can absorb it, and they can factor that into their battle tactics. Namely, because up to this point, there hasn't been anything that the Karma Twins can absorb. When Boro uses his Dark Mist jutsu, and they are unable to absorb it, is when we learn the limitation of the Karma, as well as foreshadowing for Ishiki's eventual downfall. Kawaki states to Team 7 that the Karma can only absorb energy matter, like chakra. It's impossible for it to absorb physical matter. He explains in further details, stating that if someone were to create a water jutsu using their chakra alone, then it is fair game for absorption. If that same person were to use a water jutsu from an existing water source, like a river or a sea, then the karma won't be able to absorb it. So, a fire style jutsu can be absorbed, but not something like the Kirin Sasuke used against Itachi, since he used the actual weather to form his jutsu. We do see this again during the Kashin Koji vs Jigen fight. Koji surprises Jigen by summoning existing and endless flames from some faraway mountain out in nature in the world somewhere or something. This of course surprises Jigen to realize that this isn't fire created by his chakra and therefore unable to absorb it. For the next ability, I do want to come back to the Boro fight again and explain Resonance. I believe we've only seen this once, but it's still an ability that they've exhibited, so I want to just mention it real quick. So, Kawaki and Boruto have been shown to increase the striking power of their jutsu using something they call resonance, meaning that the karma reacts to the existence of a second nearby karma. This is shown during Kawaki's introduction as well as Naruto and Boruto's sparring session. Here, we see that Kawaki just activating his karma is able to forcibly activate Boruto's karma as well. That's pretty much it for resonance. The two don't have very many in-manga fights together for their resonance to be used frequently. The two fighting each other could possibly make them stronger by an unquantifiable amount, but it wouldn't matter much anyway since I'm sure it would be an equal buff to both parties. And finally, we're on to our last ability, and that's Dimensional Travel. This one is genuinely straightforward. During Jigen's assault on the Uzumaki residence, Jigen is shown opening a portal twice. Jigen reverse summons himself to the home using Kawaki's karma.
Look how they got my boy.
The second time is when Jigen takes Naruto into a dimensional portal with the express goal of leaving him trapped there. This is referred to as sealing by a few characters in the verse. We then see that while he's able to sense Naruto's chakra, Kawaki surmises that he can also create a portal to him just as Jigen did. Unable to do this alone, Kawaki employs the help of Boruto and they are able to manifest a dimensional portal to where Jigen left Naruto. I wanted to note that in this moment, each vessel's karma took on a new shape resembling the form of their respective Otsutsuki counterparts. But that's neither here nor there. The important thing is that Boruto was able to replicate this feat by himself at a later point. When Ishiki arrives in the village to find Kawaki, he is ambushed by Sasuke who throws Boruto at him. Ishiki, unaware that Boruto has progressed in his use with the karma, as well as thinking that the boy was a sword, was caught off guard and Boruto was able to summon a portal to another dimension and seal Ishiki. Now that we've covered all the abilities that the karma has displayed so far, let's talk about the elephant in the room. This seal bears a striking resemblance in utility to the curse mark. While the two are fundamentally different, I figured the similarities were enough for me to mention it, even if it's in passing. I personally don't mind it, and I think that it's a bit of a missed opportunity that we haven't had more interactions with our boy Orochimaru, or that Sasuke hasn't mentioned the similarities between the curse mark due to him being in the exact same situation as his student back when he was a kid. But yeah, the similarities between the karma and Orochimaru's curse mark are pretty obvious, leading to many in the community to draw this conclusion. But again, those are both very different in their application and use as well as the type of jutsu that they are. The act of implanting the karma is in itself a jutsu, but I believe that this ability is actually a shinjutsu, given what we know about the Otsutsuki. Shinjutsu being the abilities used by the higher beings that are not consistent with ninjutsu. Beings such as Kaguya, Momoshiki, Delta, Ishiki, etc. I'm not going to get too in-depth with the differences between shinjutsu and ninjutsu here, but ninjutsu were basically like the Walmart version of abilities that Hagoromo used based on the usage of chakra to manipulate and operate within the realm of the elements in nature around you. Shinjutsu is more in line with the abilities that are beyond nature, dimensional creation, omnipotence, reflection of any dangerous intent, these kinds of things. Also, being that ninjutsu was created on Earth long after Ishiki placed a karma on Jigen, it just wouldn't make sense for the Otsutsuki to be utilizing a ninjutsu for the purpose of reviving themselves. But yeah, that's karma. Did you enjoy the video? Did you? If so, why not consider leaving a like, as it really helps my channel out. If you didn't like a single thing you heard, you can yell at me about it in the comments. But that's all, folks. Thanks for watching. I'm out. Holla!